to the Forest School podcast with Lewis Ames and Gemma Southerden.
It's not windy now.
I know. It's quite nice out there, sun shining.
Do you want to go and sit outside?
Yeah.
Okay. Ugh. Come with us, listeners. Come with us as we walk out of the cabin. We just tidied the cabin.
That's a nice light.
It's my. Pardon? No, this is from my emergency box in my car in case I ever get stuck in the wilds of Devon. That I can sit down. That I can go. It's got everything in it. That bag. It's got like.
First aid.
Do you know what? It hasn't got any first aid. It's got all my tow rope stuff in it. It's got like this. What's it called? The cross thing to change a tyre. Tyre pump. Just as things have broken on my car, I've gone. Oh, that'd be better to fix at the road. And it's been there. I don't know if I'm going to keep all of this in.
No.
Just a little walk.
Yeah.
A little wander. Wobble, wobble.
What are we talking about today, Lewis? Today's podcast is all about
Procrastination.
procrastination.
Wasting.
Time wasting.
Not doing what you're supposed to, Lewis.
Okay. And tell us, Lewis, if you will.
We jumped right into it. You don't want to do any preamble.
Nope. We did the preamble just now. What? See, this is everything can be applied
let's
to this
procrastinate.
theme. Exactly. What
People love
was it that
procrastination.
made you choose this topic this week, Lewis?
Why did
Share with
I
us.
talk about procrastination?
Yeah,
Because I was trying to think about.
A podcast topic, and you were like,
No.
oh,
No.
God, What do
I
we
had
talk
seen.
about now?
I had seen it in a few different places. It felt very zeitgeisty to me in my internet bubble. A few people I know, a few people I watch on YouTube had made videos about procrastination, some pro, some... I watch a lot of like productivity stuff. You and I talked about the book Getting Things Done and the pros and cons of that book, and it made me kind of go, oh, procrastination is an interesting thing, isn't it? For a long-term provision, because... I guess the positive way of framing it, like long-term provision, is like, oh, there's always another day that you can have a go at an activity. And quite often that is what we say to children or to parents, is like, don't worry about it, don't stress, that'll be here tomorrow, that'll be here next week, the leaves will fall again next year, kind of thing. And then it's like, at the extreme end of that, you get into some quite heavy procrastination and some quite like, well, that's okay, I don't need to do it now because it will come back next time, or it'll come. And I was like, I just think it's an interesting thing where we, as leaders, I'm going to use the term leaders because I think it conveys that we have some sense of direction or control, planning,
Ideas. Maybe. Yeah.
What we think about procrastination and how that affects what we see as procrastination in the groups and the children. You've put me on the spot and I've waffled.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. And I was interested by the topic because I was interested in your choice of term. I was interested in procrastination as a term because when I saw some notes that you'd made on it, I didn't watch the videos that you posted, but I wanted to not watch the videos. I did it on purpose. I wasn't procrastinating. I was procrastinating.
Sure.
I was procrastinating about watching the videos, but also as I've said before, I think it is more interesting when, like, you tell me a thing that you have read and had some ideas about.
We're not already on the same page.
Exactly. Otherwise, we've just already, and also we find it very hard to not talk about something until the podcast day.
It's because we see each other all the
so
time.
it's like, oh, I like that video, blah, blah, blah. I should probably say if this was a podcast, but it was really interesting.
Let me
blah,
just
blah,
tell
blah,
you.
blah, blah,
Blah, blah, blah,
yeah.
yeah.
But I was interested that you chose the term procrastination, because then when you were just saying about long-term provision and groups and learners going, oh, I don't need to do that today because I can leave that till tomorrow, whatever.
Yeah.
I would not necessarily term that procrastination. I think this is a discussion about executive function, which I find completely fascinating. So I really love that like Venn diagram, and you even posted a picture of a Venn diagram, didn't you?
Yeah.
And I find that really interesting. So I feel like if you hit me with the procrastination stuff that you have watched and researched, and then I'll hit you with executive function stuff.
Well, so there were two thing. Well, so one of the things I watched was a video by Wheezy Waiter, who was in it. Was a video of like why procrastination is good, which
Who
is
is this?
Wheezy Waiter, Craig Benzine. He's he's a long time YouTuber person. But obviously it's a bit clickbaity to be like, why procrastination is good. Whoa! You know, subverting things, gets clicks, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
But he kind of listed it out and talked about some things and was saying, you know, some of it was, you don't have to be doing the thing to be making progress. Procrastination is not the same as not making progress. So actually doing something like playing a video game might be giving your brain time to percolate on some either emotional stuff or some stuff that you haven't quite put together, and it kind of comes a little bit to what we talked about with Merlin, in that your brain needs to make connections, and sometimes it needs different things to make connections. So saying that particularly in the West there's this thing of productivity. You must be going, what are you doing? Your hours are ticking away.
What have you got to show for it?
What have you got to show for it? And so this idea that procrastination actually is not the same as not making progress. That it just gives you more time to think, and also that there's never a time when you are actually procrastinating, because that's not what we as animals can do. When we sit, we are thinking, we are making emotional progress, we are making whatever progress. And then if you apply that to forest school, it's like, well, they're not just doing nothing, they are thinking about something that's happened, they're trying to work out what's going on, they're feeling their vestibular system move as they climb that thing. So it's not like, hey, he doesn't want to come and sit down at the circle, he's just swinging on the thing and playing for time. You're like, maybe there's a need there, and maybe he's meeting a need, or
maybe they're observing what's going on, and that's how I'm learning about what that circle means. We take it for granted that that learner knows the benefits and the workings of we are sitting down together and sharing ideas around the circle, when in fact that knowledge may not be there yet. And by being on the swing and observing and seeing that from outside and seeing what the results are and watching people's expressions when they're doing it is all part of learning
getting
what
ready
is
to do the
circle.
thing.
That's really interesting.
And also it kind of speaks to are you aware of the Alexander principle, which is that any task will stretch to fill the time you give it.
Oh God,
right?
I've never heard that term, but yeah, I know.
So this is that thing. If you give yourself 2 hours, you'll do it in 2 hours. If you give yourself 3 weeks, you'll find a way to make it take 3 weeks.
Yeah.
I was definitely someone who, once I was responsible for my own learning, say like at university, I would get 80% of the work done in the first 20% of the time. And then I would string it out and string it out and string it out. And that was the only way I felt comfortable, was to be like, so for me it was music, and it was like, I've basically got this piece written, and now I'm going to spend the next 12 weeks sort of tweaking it a bit, maybe writing 1 or 2 more, but basically it's all done.
Yeah.
So that if something horrendous happens, I felt like I can always do the last 20%. But I knew other people that I was at uni with who would go, I don't want to think about it yet, because I know I can do it in 3 hours if I just wait until I've got 3 hours left, and I'll do it in that block time.
Some people thrive on that pressure, don't they? They actually their mind only seems to focus and sharpen at that time. And there's kind of pros and cons to both of those, isn't there? We were talking the other day about planning something that we're doing, and then having done it the first way you talked about, and you like do loads of the work quite a long time away from the actual date of the thing, and then you've kind of forgotten, like you have that kind of like sense of security of like, oh, I've done all that planning, so I don't need to worry about it. And you're like, yeah, but actually what was it? What did I do? Hang on a minute, I need to read all that again. What was that thing? You know, I don't know what this means that I've written down. And there being that sense of like adrenaline at the end and going,
and it also kind of, it's interesting if you apply it to particularly the sort of younger down the spectrum, the age spectrum that you go with this in terms of learner. I think the more interesting I find it, because quite often the younger you go, the less of a grasp of linear time and cause and consequence you have. So me at, when do you go to university? 18, 19? I knew about myself, I will feel awful in 8 weeks if I have to do this in 3 months, so I will do the horrible thing now while everyone else is going out Freshers Week. Woohoo! I'm there going, I'm going to write some Bach. Guys, I'm real cool.
You're such a geek.
And then down the line, I was much more comfortable, and other people would be. But so you get to younger children, and then there's this interesting thing I think about procrastination where, well, I guess the question is, would you let let's pick an age, 4-year-old procrastinate over something if you knew but they didn't, that it meant that they would have an awful end to the session? So, case in point, we used to have a child that came to our session, and he would have an amazing day. The last half an hour, he would go, I didn't do X. I didn't make this thing.
Yeah.
And so once we clocked on, oh, okay, that's spoiling the end of the day for you. You're not leaving in a great emotional state. Then following week, following session, we would go, let's remind them during the day. Let's go, oh, do you want to come do the thing? All the way through the day. No, I'm all right. I'll get to it in a bit. Just so I'm actually being a dog right now.
Yeah.
I'll come do that thing in a bit. And then, that's where I think leader is an appropriate role in term there, because you're going, how much do you let someone punch themselves in the face before they're sort of winding up through the day and you can see it coming?
Yeah.
But do you go, I think you'll be sad? I won't be sad, I'm fine. I'm pretty sure you're going to be sad. I'm not going to be fine. Bam.
Yeah.
I told you so.
I know. But the thing, I don't think there's anything we could have done differently in managing that situation.
No, I don't. I just think it's interesting.
Oh, completely.
Yeah.
It's fascinating. And I'm still fascinated by it. I don't think that, I would love to investigate that issue, loads more. But the trouble is, when you've got a child of that age, they can't really express a lot of the feelings that are going through. So if you try to ask that child, so what is it that you exactly want to do, or what is it that you can't really extricate that, can you, that information? And it might be that actually the thing that was making them sad was kind of a bit about not doing the thing, but also it's a transition and changing place and all those kind of emotions go with it. So it's quite hard to get to the bottom of it. And also there's a thing about reminding that person, or dropping it in and go, here's a thought that I'm thinking, because I have as you say, a more mature grasp of time and consequence and all that stuff. But because they just don't own, they have not even got the capacity for that awareness of time, that penny is not going to drop until it drops. Do you know what I mean? Maybe. So,
is it procrastination if you don't have a concept of linear time?
Exactly.
That's the thing, isn't it?
That's why I was kind of interested by that whole procrastination terminology. And so if you kind of take a side step and go, it's procrastination is one thing, and executive function is another, and that awareness of time, but also self-management and choice of behaviour, and being able to kind of step outside yourself and go, okay, right now I am doing this, and later I have the possibility, or even right now I have the possibility to stop what I'm doing and do something else. That is an awareness that will click in at a certain age, and it'll be different for every learner. So for some learners it's actually physically impossible to go, okay, I will do this for
well, they talked about
longer.
In one of the videos that so this was the Venn diagram that I shared, and it was it set it up very well. I put a link in the show notes to it, but it was a guy saying he did a CAT scan of the mind of a procrastinator.
Okay.
And then he puts it up on the screen, and it's this stick drawing, right?
Yes.
Right. So it's not actually a CAT scan, but he was saying there is a captain of the ship, and the captain is always thinking about what is the logical thing to be doing right now.
Find out about CPD courses at childrenoftheforest.com. Check out the podcast links for more details.
And saying that person is for the most part of the day in charge of steering the ship. And they're saying there's but as next to the captain is the instant gratification monkey, which we all have, and the instant gratification monkey sometimes drives the ship. Saying there's this overlap. So the procrastination monkey wants to do things that are easy and fun, instant gratification. The captain wants to do things that are logical. Sometimes they overlap. Because
so would an example of that be, I need to write something like an article or an essay.
Yeah.
And I've got the computer. I'm just going to hit up Facebook just for a sec, just to get the instant gratification of bing, bing, yes, you've got a notification, and after I've done that for a little bit, I'll be in the right
So
space.
that's the monkey.
So
That's the monkey
is
driving
the Facebook
in this analogy.
notification. Yeah.
But saying that sometimes it overlaps. Like if you enjoy cooking, and it's half an hour till you want to eat, the logical thing to do is to make dinner.
Yeah.
The thing you're enjoying doing is making dinner. They overlap. Everybody's happy. And so the only thing that can make that instant gratification monkey go away is the fear monster, which is deadlines, social embarrassment, all those things that come as a consequence of not having done the logical thing.
And that is so interesting at Forest School, and it's something that I think about a lot, and it's quite helpful to have that as the fear monster, like give it a character and a name, because in that same example of that child who gets upset at the end of the day, do you, because sometimes I think about this in terms of just like working with children in general, that sometimes you have this urge to help or to by reminding, like, if you don't do that, that will happen, or if you don't do that now, I'm worried you're going to run out of time.
If you don't tell a story to me, and so I can write it down, when we act out our stories later, you won't have a story to act out.
Do you understand that?
Do you understand that?
Which, on the one side, I think that is completely fine. That is good practice for us to remind that child and to help them understand logical time progression and consequences, and to help them emotionally deal with that and regulate and make a choice that is
have some autonomy and have some self-direction.
On the other hand, I also have this worry sometimes that us as an adult using the fear monster to get a certain behaviour. Because especially if that child is in flow, which is another thing I want to talk about, because that is a whole other thing. Procrastination, right? So if that child is completely engaged in something and is just off on one, is it okay for us to go in there and
disrupt the flow?
Yeah, and to use the fear monster as a, you know what, you might be upset later, have a little bit of fear, here you go, which will make you change your behaviour right now.
Hold up a picture of the monster, this is what's coming.
So which is it? Or is it a bit of both, and is that okay? Do you know what I mean?
I think it depends if the social embarrassment, consequence, whatever, is something you're directly in control of. So if it was like in a school setting, let's say, it might be, hey, remember, if you don't do your 5 sentences, you won't be allowed out for break.
Yeah.
Which is just you telling someone, in a minute I'm going to be horrible. Like, just so you know, I'm going to be a dick to you in 5 minutes.
You're going to get something really great taken away from you.
Yeah, and I'm giving you an out now. If it's something like, you took a big inhale.
I just suddenly thought about like the phraseology of it and going, what about flipping it on its, just saying the same thing but in a different way. So going, in that example, if you don't tell me a story, later you won't have one to act out, and last time that made you feel sad, are you okay with that? Just wording it in terms of, hey, Jenny Jones.
Lovely name, yes, carry on.
I realised I would say Billy Bob, and I was like, let's have Jenny Jones. So, hey, Jenny Jones. What we're doing at the moment is some people have told me stories, and because they've told me a story and I've got it written down, we can act out their story later. Would you like to do that? So it's a positive thing. If you do this good thing will happen, rather than if you don't do it, a bad thing will happen, which is the fear monster. Whereas phrasing it in a positive way, which seems backwards to us, because what we're doing is, like, our objective is to stop the bad sadness happening with that child. So we are approaching it from a negative consequence. But if you kind of check yourself and go, actually, hang on a minute, what is the positive outcome? What, they will get a feeling of reward and enjoyment and
I think it's
greatness.
slightly different though, because let's just keep going with this example so that we don't have to think of new ones. So the outcome of writing a story or not writing a story isn't positive emotional feelings or neutral emotional feelings. Which I think if you phrase... It could be, but I think if I phrased it to someone and said, if you do X, there'll be a positive outcome. Would you like to do the outcome?
Yeah.
Doesn't sound like, oh, you should also know. You know, it's a bit like, hey, did you know if you take this tablet, then you might feel really good at the end, right?
Yes, please.
Exactly, right? It would be irresponsible of me not to go, oh, but also I should tell you that if you don't take it, your leg's going to have to get cut off.
But what about then I could say it's irresponsible of me not to say, But if you don't do this and you carry on playing the game that you're playing, you could also have a really good time doing that. And if you stop playing the game and do what I'm doing, you may well miss out on a really great thing.
This is it, isn't it?
So that's what I'm kind of trying to say. Like, is it our place to interfere with that stuff? And I've read a thing, which is about...
That's always dangerous.
I've read this thing, which is about executive function and play, because I was like, there must be heaps of research on this, right? That's relevant to forest school. So executive function in this article I've read is broken down into 3 parts, which is inhibitory control, working memory, and cognitive flexibility.
Can I see those written down? Because
I'll say that again. Inhibitory control, working memory, and cognitive flexibility. So inhibitory control being I can continue with a thing and I can keep going even if it kind of gets tricky, and also I can potentially stop any sudden impulses that I might have that might ruin the thing that we're doing. So the example they're giving is socio-dramatic play, and how practice and socio-dramatic, lots of opportunities for socio-dramatic play gives you great practice in these different areas of executive functions, and it kind of explains why.
Yep.
And working memory, so being able to be in the moment and remember that so and so right now is the dog, and over there is the base, and what we're doing is this.
Yeah.
And previously we did this, so remember that part of the game because that was important for the next step. And so and so said that to me, and that kind of thing. And cognitive flexibility, because you've got lots of people playing this game. It's completely imaginary. Something random's going to happen, and you've got to be able to deal with that. And yes, you thought you were a dog, but now you're being told that actually you're a dog with fleas.
Yeah.
And you didn't intend that to happen.
Oh no.
It's time for
I thought I was just a dog. And now I'm a dog with
it's
fleas.
Time for your flea treat, as it is called.
Wow.
Your flea treatment.
Are you alright?
You don't want your flea treatment.
I don't want my flea treatment, ever. And yet you insist. Every week I have to.
Right, yeah.
De-fleeing me.
Where was I going with this?
I don't know.
You could argue that actually it is not our job as leaders, I'm going to go with that word that you used before, to be responsible for the emotion. This is maybe a little counter-argument. I don't necessarily agree with this. It's not our job to be responsible about the feelings of like regret. Oh my God, I didn't get a chance to do bloody blah. It's our job to give our learners the opportunity to experience it firsthand. So in this article it talks about like if you are setting up some socio-dramatic play or giving the opportunity, some children are obviously, or some learners are obviously going to have these executive functions
just to greater or
and so some people are going to need some support there, and you would observe and you would watch for signs that actually this person is actually struggling with impulse control, for example, and so you might need to step in occasionally and explain to the group that this has happened and what we're going to do now, or oh, did you mean to do that, or do you know what I mean, support them in that kind of way. But it's more about giving the opportunity, supporting if needs be, but with the idea that you are decreasing control. So this article is kind of saying like actually the adult intervention should decrease as the learner's executive functions become stronger, and that's how you build, like building muscle. You know, it's like you give a bit of support and you step away.
Have we quite happily wandered? I mean, you and I would never wander, ever, in terms of topic. I was just reflecting then, I was just going back to the word procrastination, because I think that a lot of the examples that we've used in the last 5-10 minutes have been examples of you put something off and you don't do it. And I wonder if that is the same as you put something off and that means you have to rush to do it at the end, which I would consider a more typical outcome of procrastination. Is the thing has to be done, because if it's something like, so again, that example we used of if you haven't told someone a story, when it gets to acting out time, you won't have a story to tell. It's actually a soft deadline. If there's a hard deadline, does that change how you would feel about? So there's very little at Forest. This is one of the things. There's very little at Forest School that is a hard. You must do that in a way that at school, it's carrots and sticks, and there are things you have to absolutely do. When you are an adult, you have to turn something in at a certain deadline. I guess they aren't, though, are there?
There's very little, actually.
If you become an adult, you can just go, nah, not going to hand that in. No, I'm not going to pay that council tax.
Then we start to talk about
And
natural
then
consequences, which is another big thing at forest school, because then you might go. Another example that you might call procrastination, or you might not, is it's starting to really, really rain. We're all in the middle of a game. Are we going to all stop and put our waterproof clothes on? And are we going to do that now, or are we going to do that in a minute? And because that's kind of almost more like a hard deadline.
Because the logical thing to do is to stop, to put your clothes on, to carry on afterwards.
Yes, and that might be the more adult. I have more practiced executive function. I know what's going to happen. I know that. And I also know I'm able to hold this thing in my working memory, pause, put my coat on, and then go back to it, because I can hold that in my brain, even though I'm not doing it anymore. I've still got it in my working memory.
Yeah, I'm with you.
Whereas a younger person might not. And the natural consequence of not doing it is being soaked and being really unhappy, which is kind of similar to the examples you gave, but is more like that is absolute. Like that is, do you know what I mean? You will get really wet, and that is a topic that is discussed amongst forest school people quite often. Is like, how do you deal with this?
Because then you get into. So if I just follow that example on, if you've got a child who, because the consequence that for 90% of the children playing that game is, I am wet, my clothes are wet, I'm slightly uncomfortable. Towards the end of the day, I would probably go, okay, the detriment of that consequence is pretty low. You're a bit uncomfortable. Great, we have a laugh at the gate and we say to the parents, just throw them in the bath or whatever. You do that at the start of the day and it'd feel very different because, and you get someone with, let's say, a particularly low body fat, a child that's, tiny, and you go, it's legitimately dangerous for you to do the thing.
So how do you approach that?
And how do you approach that and go, well, I don't want you to, you cannot have that natural consequence. I, as a leader, have a duty of care that I cannot let that. So then you get into this thing of like, do you allow procrastination? Do you, how much the negative affects how you view the procrastination is, and also whether it's your view of the detriment or the child's view of the detriment, and which takes precedent. And also just the example that I'm chewing over in my head. Yes, thank you, Ravens.
Applications for Forest School training are now open at childrenoftheforest.com. Check out the podcast links for more details.
So I think, I could be wrong, in the examples we're talking about, we're imagining somebody getting to the end of an activity and they realise that they've missed out on something and they are sad, and the following day or the following session, following week, they have that as a memory, builds on their connections in their brain, so that next time they see an opportunity come up, they have a different way of weighing it up. They might still and repeat, it might take them, or they might not. It might keep going, might keep going. And again, it is a question of how bad is the consequence and how much can you perceive it. Because if it's, I'm sad that I didn't get to act out a story, and that sadness manifests as crying, feeling a bit low, not finishing the session on an emotional high, which is fine sometimes, right? You don't have to, and everybody doesn't have to leave with this well. If that manifests once or repeatedly as like, I am so distraught that I didn't write a story, that I am going to smash this mud kitchen to pieces, and I'm going to take it out on someone else who's smaller than me or bigger than me. I'm just going to lash out and do whatever. And then the next session they come back and you go, do you want to do the thing? Because you were quite sad last week. And they go, I won't get sad this time. Do you let them carry? And I'm not asking you to have an answer. I'm just kind of, again, it is that thing of how do we view procrastination and how do the children view it? Because we can say with our adult brains, oh, it's always next week, it's always next time, there's always whatever. But there are these little, they're not hard deadlines, they're soft deadlines. The end of the session, it comes to lunchtime. I mean, those are quite time-based, but I guess...
Well, I kind of feel like the longer we talk, the more I'm thinking about time, and it came up as a discussion point yesterday during the session, and I can't quite remember why, but I was whittling with a younger child and an older child, and we were talking about, do you know what? It came up because I said exactly that. So a child had expressed an interest in 2 little whittled figures that I'd made. And I said, and it was quite early on in the day, and I said, we could, do you fancy making one of those today? And they were like, yeah. And then the moment passed by, and all the play was happening, and all this kind of thing. And then I did go up to that child and said, I kind of announced generally, like, I'm going to do some whistling if anyone wants to play. And I went up to the child and I was like, you remember you saw those things? Now might be a good time to make one, because I'm looking at the time. It's 2:00 now. We don't want to be rushing. That wouldn't be safe. Would you like to do it? And they made that choice. Yeah, actually I do. I'll stop that game. That's more attractive to me. And then we ended up talking about time, and the older child was talking about something to do with 15 minutes, or no, I think they asked what's the time now, and I explained what's they wanted to know, how long have we been doing this?
Okay.
How long have we been doing whittling? And I said, well, we started at this time and now it's this time. And they couldn't work out therefore how long it was. Right. So we talked about how long it was, and also how long it felt. So we talked about, it's been 25 minutes that we've been doing this. And the older child said, gosh, it feels like we've just started, Right. But how much longer have we got left? And what will that feel like? And then I found myself like drawing a clock.
Okay.
And trying to show pictorially what 15 minutes looked like.
Right.
Didn't work. Because we were whittling.
Yeah.
We were focused on that.
Yeah.
But the reason I wanted to draw the clock was because I was like, okay, there is some learning that needs to happen here.
Yeah.
These learners are expressing to me that they have some interest in time and what that feels like and what that means. And maybe what that feels like when you're whittling compared to how that feels when you're in flow in a different way, running around playing in the woods. And I think that the thing about forest school and a lot of opportunity for play is that it gives the learners complete freedom and opportunity to manage their own time a lot of the time, and that is one of the complete amazing benefits of it, as well as one of the challenges. So that's why we're having this discussion right now, because for us as leaders it's quite a unique position to be in. It's not like school. We are not, as you say, there are fewer soft deadlines, but the fact that you have, especially if you're running a whole day as opposed to 2 hours on a school field, the opportunity for children and learners to learn about their own time management and their own perception of time is actually enormous. And that's a kind of learning point that I maybe haven't quite recognised until quite recently.
Yeah. So I think there's 2 things that I would take from that. One is, it makes me even more certain that 2 hours is almost not enough to call forest school. I mean, 2 hours is good. Yeah. But you talk about some people that go, I'm running forest school, we get 45 minutes with however many kids, or we get whatever class. You go, okay, it's interesting to think about procrastination in a 45-minute session is going to feel very different to procrastination in what we run as a 6-hour day for a lot of children.
And it's going to affect your behaviour, isn't it? Because you already go in there with a certain amount of anxiety about, but I really want to do this thing, which is another thing that gets talked about a lot, because a lot of practitioners are like, but hang on a minute, they want to spend the whole time fighting with sticks. And I am concerned that they're missing out on all this other stuff. They are concerned that they're missing out on all this stuff. Sorry, carry on, I've jumped on.
No, that's kind of expanded on the thing I was thinking of, like, it changes everybody's view of the time deadline in a way that let's not forget to acknowledge the privilege that we have of running
completely.
A 6-hour day with 2 of us, and we run long provision, all these things. We are very lucky in that sense. But it also made me think, so I was just thinking over, we're saying time is a deadline in forest school, just because none of us can stop that, right? We can't stop it for the children. In a way that we could, I guess you could say that, like, there is almost always a bit more time for, I didn't write a story. Okay, well, should we do all the acting out next time? Should we do your story today and we'll do it? And then, so that then becomes even softer, and you can move all these things. But we are not the only ones that impose deadline on children. Their peers and play do as well. And so I was wondering then, and thinking, how does procrastination play into play? So just that sense of, like, like you were saying, that person yesterday decided that whittling was more attractive than the game that they were playing.
Support the podcast today by becoming a Patreon member at childrenoftheforest.com. Check out the podcast links for more details.
But they've got to make a decision on that in that moment. And whittling is always there. So the things that leaders can put on, for the most part, whittling always there. There's probably always firelighting to be done. There's doing, but your peers might never go back to being dragons that are named Batman ever again. Mm-hmm. So that is a weird procrastination. That if you miss that, your peer, you might be able to say to your peer group, "Hey, can we play that thing again?" But you can't guarantee that's coming back. So that's another thing, isn't it? Of like, that we might not appreciate that the children are constantly weighing up, that particularly, like you're saying about this cognitive function thing, that the social and emotional play and the role playing that happens is so ethereal and
so
transient, and it comes and it goes, and it's never, even if you go, shall we play dragons like we did last week, it's not the same game of dragons.
Completely.
So procrastinating and not playing dragons this week
is really important. It's massive.
It's really important.
And we don't, I think that's a really great point to make, because it ties into that thing of, as adults, as outsiders, watching a group of children just playing. Like, no good forest school practitioner is ever going to use that sentence, but they might have that instinct, especially if they are under pressure themselves, so they're working in a school environment, they've not got much time. Shorter sessions, they want to give the children the best experience possible, and they might feel that sense of guilt. I'm sure we've all felt that sense of guilt, where we've gone,
or that you've got someone watching you, that you've got senior leadership, or you've got someone else coming in and going,
or assessing you, or if you're trying to reflect on your session and go, well, what actually happened? I don't actually really know, because I wasn't part of that game, because sometimes they don't want you to be part of the game, and you're observing and you're doing good practice and you're making sure everyone's okay and you're trying to trying to get what's going on, but you can't ever really get what's going on when they're in the midst of sociodramatic.
I don't understand it when they explain it.
Because as well as that role thing of you just saying they may never be dragons again, there's also so much flipping stuff going on. Like, you as the person in that game may never have that sense of power again. You might not ever be imbued with a sense of control
is not the social currency. Yeah, you choosing to spend time with that girl. It's like, you can do that today, but to next session they might be a different person. They might not even they might not want to play with you, or you might not be playing in the same way, or you've missed a chance that the group bonded, and how young do we realise that children form these little cliques, and if you miss out on, hey, you didn't come to Sarah's sleepover, so you're not part of the cool gang, and you go, in a forest school session you could go, well, you procrastinate out of going to play dragons that day, and you might be out for a really long time. So procrastinating on that is massive. It can be massive, can be nothing, can be massive. How do you weigh that up?
Yeah, but it's a real valid point to make, because it's about respecting the choices of the learners and going, hang on a minute, if you have chosen to spend your time in this way, that is a really valid choice, and that's okay. You have done that for a reason. I guess it's our job as leaders as well to interrogate what the reason is for the choice in an activity. So if you've got a learner who is, for example, hardly ever choosing to engage in socio-dramatic play with their peers, and is choosing a lot to come up to you and ask for activities or ask for support, is that okay? Are they okay with that? Is that a choice that's made for positive reasons and it's a need, or is there something preventing another option being chosen? So kind of investigating that, and as part of your reflection, and going, oh, hang on a minute, was everybody free to choose? And I remember some feedback that I've had when someone was looking at my planning for forest school, and the feedback was, well, you haven't written down free play on your plan. And I was like, well, that's obvious. There's always going to be free play. None of these activities are optional. Yeah. And they were like, I want to see that written down. I want to see opportunity for free play.
The two words, free play.
Written on your plan. And I was like, okay, that's an interesting way of looking at it. But in terms of trying to explain or justify the way your session might be structured, especially if you are being watched by somebody else or observed or checked, being able to explain the value of free choice and the learning that's going on with there on every level that we've just discussed is pretty huge, isn't it? It's pretty huge because, and we have talked about this before in terms of like that feeling where maybe a group, not that you've lost control, but like the group is so much a group that you're going, oh, hang on a minute, I'm challenging myself here. Am I giving them enough, or am I aware of their progress in learning enough?
And that can be one of the hard things about doing forest school, like peripatetically going into schools, is that you are working with, you know, in my experience, I've worked with a class, let's say, that class has been together Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday morning, Friday afternoon they're with me, and I'm expected to understand 4.5 days of group bonding. I'm not part of that group, so why would they ingratiate themselves to me and go, cool, you're part of the group, Lewis, we love you the most. Well, they obviously do, but do you know what I mean? There's that thing, isn't there, of like, you don't know that. I was going on, while I was talking, my brain was doing something else, and I was trying to think about going back to that idea right at the start of this podcast, and I said procrastination is seen as doing nothing, but you're never doing nothing.
Yeah.
I would say it's very hard to do nothing at forest school.
Oh yeah.
Really fucking hard to genuinely do nothing. Adult, child. To be outside and do nothing is hard.
What about for learners who find being outside very stressful for maybe sensory reasons or other reasons, and therefore have a
But that's the other end of the spectrum,
shutdown?
isn't it? That's not...
That's obviously not doing nothing, but it's not engaging with the group.
No.
Not engaging with the
And I was also
activities.
thinking, I've had some groups, particularly, let's say, summer term year 6, absolutely burnt out groups. And you kind of go, as we've talked about, the big invitation, hey guys, you wanna do that? No.
No, and who are you?
No. And I've had feedback before from teachers where they've said, the children have said that they're bored at forest school, but they're not doing anything. And at the time I would never have gone, they're never doing nothing. But then in a school field that is bereft of change and natural loose parts and things like that, you might have an easier job doing nothing. In a woodland, which I think is another reason that being in a woodland is part of the forest school principles, it's really hard to be in a woodland and do nothing. And so then it becomes...
There is no such thing as procrastination then. I was thinking about that time we had, it was summer holidays I think, and we had some older children on the net. So big strung up net between the trees, lying down, gives you a lovely
it's like a massive
experience. It's and there was I don't know if it was me and you working or someone else. It was a summer holiday day and the weather was really nice, and some older kids came and they spent basically the whole time on the net chatting, sometimes chatting about, have you got a boyfriend? What is a boyfriend? All this kind of stuff. And then, were you there or was it with somebody else? Someone else.
I don't remember it if it was there.
And then like younger children kind of occasionally going on and going, and then coming off again. Coming up to us going, they're talking about boys. I don't want to be on the net anymore. I kind of thought it was going to be fun, and then it really wasn't. It was really boring. And me and the person I was working with were kind of like checking in on these people, checking in with each other. Are they okay? Like, their parents have paid for this. Like, they've paid for them to come for one day for a holiday club. Well, there's another thing. Can you call a one-day holiday club forest school? Maybe not.
No.
Forest school style holiday club. Is that okay?
Okay, so I have a thing to change though. So again, you and I, always laser focused. But can you have procrastination if the goal that you want at the end is not self-chosen, autonomously chosen? Because reminding someone that they're going to miss out on the end, it's not an autonomously chosen goal. If I'm thinking about the captain driving the ship and the monkey wants to do instant gratification, for it to count as procrastination, presumably you have to have a goal that the captain wants done. Not an external person wants done, you want done. You want to hand in the assignment because you want to pass the course. You want to cook the dinner because you're absolutely starving. You want to finish the book because the book will help improve your practice. You want to get to the end of this podcast and they're waffling on and you're like, I'm half listening, but I am listening. You, Sarah. I don't know who Sarah is, but someone's just shit themselves. Someone's just gone fucking hell. So, the example that I want to change it to is projects that are too big.
Yes, I was going to say that. Yeah.
We have had
Building the house.
multiple attempts at building a cob house or building a cob fireplace to different levels of success. The children involved in those projects are always
Child-led.
desperate for them to be a fireplace. That's the logical thing they want done,
or a
right?
House, a house.
Or a
Go
house.
with the house.
Okay, let's say they want a house. The logical thing to be doing is building the walls. But they will procrastinate and go, I'm pretty sure, and say it as confidently as you like, I think that the thing we need to do is actually work on the flags and the door handles first. Okay, have we got walls or anything?
I'm not sure that's procrastinating. That's
I
what
think
I'm
it
really
is.
interested in.
I think it is because I think that is the fun part of the project, but it isn't the logical part of the project. And so it's procrastinating, and then the fear monster would come in at the end of the session when you go, we haven't made progress on the house in the way that we might think. And the captain who goes, I know that, because I think most of the children in those projects know that the logical thing is to dig for clay in the hole, to make that into bricks, to do the thing. Even if we tell them, hey, maybe the next thing to do is to build some bricks.
I think some of them do, but I honestly genuinely think that some of them don't. And that's where I think it's really interesting. That's where I think the learning happens. Because if you have a conversation with some of those children, they can't actually grasp what you're saying. And I'm talking like older primary age children. Thinking of some learners that I have spoken to quite recently. So you would take it for granted that they would understand those steps. But actually at the moment they are so completely in the world of imagining the house having an extension and a bridge that goes over the path and things that are so outside the realms of possibility. If you actually listen to what they're saying, so you ask them a question like, what do you think we should do next? And they're like, it should have a bridge that goes over the path suspended in the trees. And you go, you're going, that's actually impossible. Like I couldn't even do that with 3 weeks time, all of like loads of expensive resources and loads of tools. That's impossible. But that is what they are fixated on. So it's not about procrastinating about doing the walls. It's about it's like a different type of play. So you might interpret, I want to build a Celtic roundhouse as I want to build a Celtic roundhouse. Actually, it's I want to
my mistake is
fantasize.
taking it at face value.
For some children, they really do.
And
they want that sensory thing of their clay on their walls and, oh, look, and I've built a thing and there's a result. But for some children, it isn't even about that. It's like, I want to inhabit this fantasy world where we are Celts and there is a roundhouse.
Do you not think there's some children, and I would apply this to me as an adult as well, it's almost like, I want to have had built a house in the past.
Oh, definitely.
I want to have cooked dinner.
Definitely.
I don't want to cook dinner.
And I think you can tell that kind of feeling when children or learners ask you to do it for them.
Will you get the stick for me?
Yeah, exactly. So they go, I want to build the Celtic roundhouse. And you go, okay, what do we need to do first? What do you think we might need? What should we do first?
I'll give you a hand.
And they go, and they go, can you just build the wall? Can you just build the walls? And they're like, but if I build the walls, is this going to be your house? Are you going to feel like you've got any ownership of this project? That's the child that maybe is procrastinating and is going, I can't really be bothered to do the hard work part of it.
And again, that's the interesting thing where as an adult that if you build the house, they're actually not going to get the goal that they want, which is the feeling of having had built a roundhouse.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that right.
No, I know what you mean.
Not. But that's what their procrastination comes out as, will you build that bit? Will you move that for us? Well, can you put it up there? And what I think is interesting about particularly bigger projects, like building is an interesting one, is they know, and a lot of them are sneaky, and they know that they flatter my ego, and they go, you're so much stronger than us. It'll be easy for you to put it over there. And I have to check myself because I'm like, yeah, it would. I'm 3 times your size. I could pick all that up and I could do it really easily. But you won't get the goal that you want.
I I just really want to like repeat myself a little bit and say that
Sure.
that is definitely one type of learner that you're describing, that we're describing, and you could kind of like slightly pigeonhole that as like that is a type of behaviour you see at forest school. Like I want a result, I want to feel like I've had the result, but I can't really bother. I kind of
It's
want,
an interesting sense of maybe entitlement, or not being used to creating a play space. To, you know, we go to play parks. The play park is fixed. You don't really add to it. You go up and down the slide. You do the thing.
Or maybe like not enough kind of trust in your own ability because you haven't had that experience to actually go and do it. Like you think you're going to fail. You've had a lot of adults kind of doing things for you. You don't really trust you. Like you
It's the
really want it
opposite
to
of
be
a
good.
can do.
Yeah, you kind of want. You've got this idea and you've got this imagination, but you just think, oh well, I'm not going to be able to do it to that great standard, and I'm going to be disappointed with my own work. So I'll just get an adult to do it. Or fear of failure, all that kind of stuff. But then there is definitely this other category of learner. And I think it is an executive function thing, who will describe to you this completely impossible scenario.
Yeah.
And it's not age-based. So I know 2 kids, they live in my house. One of them is older than the other.
Oh, yeah.
But will go, if you said, so what do you want to do today? We were talking about bike tracks. I want to build a bike jump that goes to the moon and it blah-de-blah-de-blah-de-blah-de-blah. And the one that is 2 years younger goes, how about we just start by making that hill a bit bigger? And it is like and there's not really much you can do about that apart from support and scaffold and help and give the experience of, do you know what I mean? Like what is in the realms of your possibility, like as a person, as a human, what am I capable of doing and building, and also what is the world capable of support.
And so in terms of, okay, so that leads then into an interesting thing about scope and practice and zone of proximal development.
Yes.
So if you and so almost if you observed a child that's starting to bite off more than they could chew, let's say, in terms of I want to make a 9-foot roundhouse, right?
Do you say anything?
I've never made a roundhouse before. I've seen it in a book and I read that they were 9 foot wide and they da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da. Okay?
Yep.
So one thing you could do is you could, as a leader, look at that and go, I think that is well outside your skill set.
Yeah.
I'm going to suggest that you make a 3-foot wall.
Yeah.
Because I think you will get a sense of achievement and I think that will help you get to the next one. I think if you bite off this massive project, you will procrastinate and you won't get it done and actually nothing will be achieved. But if I can talk you into this smaller goal, then you're less likely to procrastinate. It's shorter to do.
Yeah, and do you have that whole conversation, or do you just go, okay, and just let it ride, and that's where the learning comes?
And I think that's where, if we go back to what we were talking about earlier, it depends how bad the outcome will be. If it's somebody that I know will be distraught and absolutely inconsolable, and I don't think it's worth the emotional toll of them not finishing the project, then I will probably try and talk them down to a smaller project, get that sense of completion, build up that self-esteem, da-da. If it's somebody that I think could take it, has got the resilience to bounce back and go, yeah, you're right, Lewis, I don't know what I was thinking, this is way too big. When I meet that child, I'll let you know, and and I will write a book about that child.
But I agree, that's rare. But
Yeah.
there is the child.
Yeah,
that doesn't
I'm being
care.
facetious.
They don't care. They just go, okay, that was a moment in my quality world that isn't there anymore. It's no longer important to me.
Yeah.
Moments past.
Yeah.
And that happens all the time. And I think that is also valuable to have that and not cling on to an idea, and to have that cognitive flexibility that we have as adults. And to
it
respect
also pulls in though,
children's.
doesn't it? So our session is, our provision is almost unending. Just rolls, cycle, season to season, year to year, do. One thing that I think is interesting about procrastination at Forest School is how long do you leave a half-finished project, depending on the size of it, how long do you let someone procrastinate, or a group procrastinate, before you go, I actually took that treehouse down, or we needed those pallets for something else. You hadn't touched them you guys hadn't played with it for 6 weeks. You'd been doing something else. That procrastinate, there's this weird, again, it's a sort of deadline, but it's not a deadline. Do you say to a group, well, how about we give it a month? Do you say that at the start? Do you say to them, at the week when you've noticed it? Do you go, guys, just so you know, if you don't play with it this week, I'm probably going to take it down? Because nothing will get them to play with it faster than you going.
That's the fear monster again.
That is the
it?
fear monster. And especially our site, it's used by lots of different groups over the week. So we're quite good with the children about going, what would you like what can the other groups do to this?
I'm
What
not
can't
necessarily sure that the fear monster does always have that effect. I think sometimes it's the other way. Like for children who have anxiety going on or anything like that, it actually kind of kills engagement. Like you start bringing in the fear monster and it's like,
this is
okay,
unfun.
well, this is actually so great for me that I just won't even engage, and may also have an impact on other activities that they might go, oh, well, do you know what, I'm just not going to do anything then. I
don't know the answer, but I feel like we've had a good little ramble around
very interesting ramble. Very, very interesting ramble. We have to go now because my stomach is rumbling so loudly that I think you can probably hear it on the podcast.
Do you think?
I think maybe. So if you can, I'm really sorry.
If you've heard something in the last, however long this podcast has been, and
you've
if you've gone, that's probably a plane going over. No planes have gone. Not a single plane has gone over. It's just Gemma's tummy. I wanted to say before we go that there's lots of stuff going on. There's lots of resources going on, webinars, things that are happening in the Forest School community at the moment. And you and I sat down and talked about it, didn't we? And talked about the different ways that things are happening. And we wanted to just get out on the podcast that we're never going to charge for the podcast. Podcast is never going to be something that we go can only get it if you pay for a thing.
I was going to charge. I was going to
if people
get to episode 100 and then go, hey, I'm going to take this all away.
You're like a drug dealer.
I'm going to take it all away. I've given you a little taste. Now you have to subscribe and pay me $1 million. No, I'm joking. Of course.
The Patreon is there. If people feel like this is valuable and they have the extra money and or not even the extra money, if they feel like they would like to pay for a packet of crisps for us to eat before we do a podcast, or pay for
my stomach is rumbling,
or whatever else, then that's lovely. But that's not what we're expecting of anybody. We know that lots of people have had their hours reduced, or they may not be in work at all at the moment, and it felt like the wrong time. At the start of the pandemic, there was lots of community spirit and lots of let's all pick together and do that, and we wanted to keep doing that with this podcast. So this is a way of doing CPD that is completely free. Lots of people are not in a position to buy all the books that we read or to interview all the people that we interview, and so this is a way that we wanted to give back to the Forest School community. It's nothing. We're never going to charge people for it.
I mean, it may be a gift that is unwanted.
Yeah, I don't care if you want it, Michael. Again, don't know who Michael is, but I'm going to pick that.
Hey guys, we've got something for you. It's us sitting.
It's us waffling. Would you like it? Not really, guys. You'd love it.
No, come on, you guys. Take the gift.
Take it.
Take it now. Take it. Every
Enjoy
week.
it. And would you believe we're not charging you for this waffle? Because we love you all.
And swearing.
We're
not. The swearing comes free. But if
you talked about doing a premium version of the podcast
with more swearing.
Where we just, if you are genuinely interested in a podcast where me and Gemma just sit here and we list swear words we know.
You know those podcasts where if you are a Patreon subscriber, you get extra content? Like some people use that model. And so you can have the real swear words there, like the proper ones, not the ones that come out like naturally when we're even trying to be slightly professional on the podcast.
I'm going to beep that out so people don't know what it is, right? I'm going to bleep out the words thunder, and then I'm going to put beeps over all of that, so people I'll be so confused and they'll be like, what did he say? What did he say?
So, if you are interested in that product, just doing a bit of market research if you're interested in the special additional swear cuss word product podcast item, then just drop us a line.
We cannot do anything earnestly.
And we'll just charge you $2 a month for the extra.
What about bag?
That's for free.
I'm going to beep so much. Bye!
Bye!
If you like this podcast and want to support more episodes, you can donate through Patreon. Visit patreon.com/Children of the Forest to show your support for the Forest School podcast.